9 cantos. The 10th canto is distinct from the first 9 cantos because it deals directly with the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. One will be able to capture the effects of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. One will be unable to capture the effects of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. The book is complete in 12 cantos, each independent, but it is good for all to read them in small installments, one after another. I must admit my frailties in presenting Srimad Bhagavatam, but still I am hopeful of its good reception by the thinkers and leaders of society on the strength of the following statement of the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.11. Tadvak visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratislokam avadavati api namanyantant anantasya yaso nikitani yach chinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhava. On the other hand, that literature which is full of the descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a transcendental creation meant for bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of a misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literature, even though irregularly composed, is heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Om Tat Sat, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Okay, so let us review what we just read. And it's good to take notes, because you'll need the notes to write an essay on what you learn. By the time you finish, you will have written a book almost as long as the Bhagavatam in essays. But that's only the proof that you read the whole thing and that you've come to understand it. Okay, so Prabhupada says that we need to know the present need of human society. And then he says, what is that need? Well, human society has developed many advanced techniques of communication. And everyone has a chance of communicating with the whole world nowadays. Right? He says, human society is no longer bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. Yeah, you can go on the internet and find out about any country and connect with all kinds of people from all over the world, almost instantaneously. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages, and the world tendency is toward one state or one human society. Well, this is a major theme today. That is, the Europeans and the globalists. They're known as the globalists. They're Europeans and Americans. They want to have a one-world government. And therefore, the world tendency is toward one state or one human society. Well, 5,000 years ago, there was one state and one human society under Maharaj Yudhisthira. And 1.7 million years ago, there was one world and one state under Lord Ramachandra. So it's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. But today, there's been a tremendous bifurcation of society into many different countries and ethnicities and so forth. And that bifurcation is continuing. You have places like Andhra Pradesh that got divided into Telangana and Andhra. You have Kashmir that's divided into Pakistani Kashmir and Indian Kashmir. You have Palestine that's divided into Israel and Palestine, right? So the more we advance in Kali Yuga, the more flags there are in the United Nations, as Prabhupada says. Right? He said it'll get so bad that every house will have its own flag, its own currency, and its own customs and immigration. Every house. That's how bad it'll get in Kali Yuga. So human society is broader than in the Middle Ages, and the world tendencies toward one state or one human society. The ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society, nay, of the entire energy of living beings. Well, this is a fact. Krishna is the seed-giving father of all living entities. So it's not far-fetched that there could be the oneness of the entire human society, of the entire energy of the living beings. So we living beings are one of the energies of Krishna. There's Krishna's internal energy, Krishna's external energy, and his marginal energy. We are his marginal energy. We're part and parcel of Krishna's superior spiritual energy, but we are in a marginal position. That means we can go either on the material side or the spiritual side. We belong to the spiritual side, but we can go into illusion and stay in the material side. Wherever we stay, we are still eternal, so we could be eternally in the material world or eternally in the spiritual world. And that's a pretty scary thing, to be eternally in the material world. You know. So the goal is to go to the spiritual world. So Prabhupada is talking about the ideals of spiritual communism. So first homework is explain the difference between material communism and spiritual communism, because this is a theme throughout Prabhupada's works, his preaching. He was often talking about spiritual communism. So homework: explain the difference between spiritual communism and material communism. The ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society, nay, of the entire energy of living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. So this is a goal of the Srimad Bhagavatam, to have the oneness of human society. Okay. Oneness of human society. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need in human society. If we regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam and think about it, it's possible to reach this goal of the oneness of human society. It means everyone comes to a consensus understanding of what is the purpose of life, and they work cooperatively together to attain that purpose. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need in human society. It begins, therefore, with an aphorism of Vedanta philosophy, Janmadasya Yata, to establish the ideal of a common cause. So this Janmadasya Yata is very important. It means that, in fact, if you have the Bhagavatam, let's go to the first verse of the first chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it begins with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. But then the first line says Janmadasya Yata. So what does Janmadasya Yata mean? It means that it's a definition of God. Yeah, that Janmad Adi, creation, sustenance, and destruction, Asya, of the manifested universes, Yata, from whom. So it's a definition of God. He from whom the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the manifested universes emanate and come. He's the source of everything. Or, as it says in Bhagavad Gita, Ham Sarvasya Prabhu, Matak Sarvam Pravartate, 10th chapter, 8th verse, that he is the source of everything. That's the definition of God. It's not that something is coming from the devil and something else is coming from God. Everything is coming from Krishna. That is the definition of God. So if everything is coming from Krishna and there's only one unique source, then that should be the basis of spiritual communism. Communism comes from the word commune, which is a place where people live together and share equally and cooperate to make things work in their commune. Commune is a collection of people that are working together for a common cause. It says, human society at the present moment is not in the darkness of oblivion. Well, he says, Janmadasya yata, to establish the ideal of a common cause. So that's what will happen if we sit down and listen carefully to Srimad Bhagavatam. We will all come to the same conclusion. What is that? That we all have a unique origin. It's Krishna. See, right now people think, oh, my race is different than your race, or my ethnic group is different than your ethnic group, and your ancestor is Abraham, but my ancestor is Shiva, or like that. You know, everyone has got a different ancestor, right? But that's not true. It's actually an illusion. It's not true. But unless you read Srimad Bhagavatam, people have these type of thoughts in their mind. You know, the Jews have Israel for the Jews, and the Muslims have Saudi Arabia only for the Muslims, and Americans have America for the Caucasians, but not anymore. There's a shift happening now, and it's causing a lot of tension. So this idea of exclusivity of origin is actually illusion. There's only one origin, that's Krishna. But as long as people harbor these type of false ideas in their minds, it is the seed of dissension, of fighting and war and so forth. So this human society has made rapid progress in the fields of material comforts, education, and economic development throughout the entire world. But there is a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large, and therefore there are large-scale quarrels, even over less important issues. And this is true, right? You can't deny it. There is need of a clue as to how humanity can become one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Okay, so then spiritual communism is about peace, prosperity, and friendship. Peace, prosperity, and friendship with a common cause. Well, if we look in Bhagavad Gita, it's very interesting. It says that agitation of the mind or disturbance of the mind is due to want of an ultimate cause in life or purpose in life. So in the second chapter, 66th verse, it says, Nasti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavetak santasya kutasukam. One who is not connected with the Supreme and Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? And in the purport, Prabhupada says, therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal, and when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace. However much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. So if you want to explain the difference between spiritual communism and material communism, then you have to also understand Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, verse 66, in the purport, the verse and the purport. Disturbance is due to not having an ultimate goal in life. And here it says, there's a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large, and therefore there are large-scale quarrels, even over less important issues. There's need of a clue as to how humanity can become one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need, for it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. So, right here in this preface to Bhagavad Gita, to the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is giving an all-encompassing worldview that the problems of society today, even though there's so much progress in material comforts, education, and economic development, still, the more advancement there are in these things, the more people are fighting and arguing. It doesn't make sense, right? But if everyone would sit down and regularly hear and discuss Bhagavad Gita, they would be able to come to a common cause, Janmadasayata, to establish the ideal of a common cause. And this will bring about peace and friendship and prosperity, having this common cause. What is the common cause? That is loving Krishna, serving Krishna, remembering Krishna. The Supreme Personality got it. Because this verse, 266, says if a person doesn't have a relationship with Krishna, or is not connected to Krishna through Krishna consciousness, they can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind. And without which, there's no possibility of peace, and without peace, there's no happiness. And everybody wants happiness. Here's the formula for it, you see. Okay. Any questions up until now? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam should be introduced also in the schools and colleges. Yeah, because today, what they're teaching in the schools and colleges is not knowledge, it's ignorance. It's avidya, it's not vidya. And what happens to kids that go through that indoctrination? They end up atheistic, and they end up being #1 pukka sense gratifiers. Doesn't matter, they're Indian, or Chinese, or Lebanese, or whatever they are, whatever country, whatever race, whatever ethnicity they come from, they go through 12 or 18 or 24 years of material education. They end up being sense gratifiers and atheistic. It doesn't matter if they chant Hare Krishna. They're still atheistic and sense gratifiers, right? Because they've been indoctrinated for at least 12 to 18 years with a bunch of nonsense. So, Srimad Bhagavatam should be introduced also in the schools and colleges, for it is recommended by the great student devotee Prahlada Maharaj in order to change the demoniac face of society. Well, that's a fact. Society has become demoniac today. Just look in the newspaper every day. Just look at the news. It doesn't matter whether you're in the United States or in India. The news is just as bad in India as it is here. Just as bad. In fact, today in the news, an Indian man killed his 2 children and showed a video of it to his wife, who ran off with another man. And now the parents of the husband complained to the police that it's not the husband's fault. It's the wife's fault because she cheated on her husband and ran off with another man. So now the police are investigating the wife. You see? This is in India. This is in India. So it's very interesting how this happens. See, in India, they actually will blame the wife because she caused the husband to do this heinous thing. In the United States, they would blame the husband. But in India, they're blaming the wife. You see, the culture is different in India than here. Yeah? And they're pursuing her, and they have the law to pursue her. They have the laws that will permit them to pursue her and her boyfriend. So it's a different society. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying it's a different society, and it's actually happening. Well, obviously there is, you know, just like one time there was a book called about Aurangzeb. Prabhupada talks about this. But the whole book was about Shah Jahan. So when the author was speaking somewhere, the person said, you say that you entitled the book Aurangzeb, but the whole book is about Shah Jahan, his father. And he said, yes, that's a fact. He said, but why, you know, why did you call it Aurangzeb? He said, because Aurangzeb's behavior, as seen by Shah Jahan, that's the real title. So, I mean, you have to hear from the author to understand why he did it like that. Well, you know, Shah Jahan was Aurangzeb's father. He killed some of his brothers, and he put his father and mother in jail. And they were experiencing, you know, like misery. Their own son, right, was such a horrible person. You know? So in the same way, you know, people's actions have influence on other people. So here the husband, they're claiming, was pushed by the wife to kill the children. I mean, in the United States it wouldn't be like that, but in India they see it differently. Yeah. So there is a demonic face of society. Every day there's demoniac activities are taking place. I mean, horrible things. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam recommends, Prabhupada says, Komaran acharit prajno dharmam bhagavatam iha durlabam manusam janma tadapi adruvam artadam. Prahlad Maharaj says that children, right from their very earliest age, should be trained in dharmam bhagavatam, in Krishna consciousness. And in this way, they will not grow up to be godless, and you will not have a godless civilization. There will be no cheating on husbands and wives. There will be solid marriages. Children will always be protected by their parents, and they won't be subjected to atheistic education. So one should learn right from the earliest time, right in the womb of the mother, one should learn Krishna consciousness. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, he was educated in the womb of his mother. Disparity in human society is due to lack of principles in a godless civilization. Well, that's the whole point. There are no principles anymore. Just whatever feels good you can do. If you feel like you're a girl but you were born a boy, then you can use the girl's bathroom. And if you feel like you're a boy but you were born a girl, you can use the boy's bathroom. It's whatever you feel like that counts. You see, there are no more principles anymore. So he's saying there's disparity in human society. Yeah, rich people, poor people, happy people, miserable people. It's all due to lack of principles in a godless civilization. All due to the educational system where they don't teach about God. They're not allowed to talk about God. They're not allowed to talk about God. Right? And public schools are free in America. Why are they free? They want to poison the mind of your kid. That's why they're free. They want to train your kid to be a sense gratifier. So you'll buy X amount of products on Amazon. Right? You won't even go to the box stores anymore. You just click on the product and pay digitally, and it's delivered to you to Amazon Prime. It's the ideal way to increase sense gratification and consumerism. There is God, or the Almighty, from whom everything emanates, by whom everything is maintained, and in whom everything is merged to rest. Material science has tried to find the ultimate source of creation very insufficiently, but it is a fact that there is one ultimate source of everything that be. This ultimate source is explained rationally and authoritatively in the beautiful Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavatam. So the scientists are hopelessly looking around for the origin of life. But here it is. Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate explanation of the origin of all life. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It says right there in the introductory line of the entire book that Krishna is the origin of everything. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is a transcendental science not only for knowing the ultimate source of everything, but also for knowing our relation with Him and our duty toward the perfection of the human society on the basis of this perfect knowledge. So, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The perfect educational book for all people is right here. It's called Srimad Bhagavatam. If you want your children to be educated, they should read Srimad Bhagavatam. They don't have to read Tom, Dick, and Harry went for a ride on a turtle. These are the type of children's books nowadays. They learn to read about riding on a turtle. Do you learn anything by reading a book like that? Some people say, well, you learn to read. Yeah, but what they used, the material they used for you to learn to read is nonsense. See? So here, there are three things. We should be introduced to Krishna, we should learn how to serve Krishna, and through that service, we can develop pure love for Krishna. Those are the three essential steps of education. You establish a relationship with the Lord, you function in that relationship, and through that constant functioning, you develop love of God. You develop love of God, you go back to Godhead in this lifetime. See? So this is our duty toward perfection of the human society. Is by knowing our relationship with Krishna, acting in that relationship, and eventually developing love for God. It is powerful reading matter in the Sanskrit language, and it is now rendered into English elaborately so that simply by a careful reading, one will know God perfectly. So much so that the reader will be sufficiently educated to defend himself from the onslaught of atheists. Wow, that's a fact. There is an onslaught of atheism today. Everywhere you go, there are people challenging your belief in God. On television, in the newspapers, in movies, on the internet, and video games, everywhere. They're challenging your belief in God. They want to erase it. They want this to be a godless society, which it is already, but they want it to be a completely godless society. They want to eradicate any vestige of belief in God from the American society today, as well as in India, as well as in Europe, all over the world. See? So, over and above this, the reader will be able to convert others to accepting God as a concrete principle. Now, this is what we teach in our Saturday and Sunday children's class. We teach them how to convince an atheist and a materialist that God exists. And the kids are getting to be good at it. Yeah. Of course, if you don't bring your kids, they might be able to convince you that God doesn't exist. But if you bring your kids, then they'll be able to convince you that God does exist. So it requires training. And the training is not only academic, the training is also lifestyle in the home. They just buried 2 days ago a 95, 96-year-old rabbi in New York. He was from the older generation, you know, the pre-World War II generation. So he saw the Nazis and he had to run away from them and all that. And he came to New York, and he started a sect of Judaism. And in his funeral, there were 100,000 people, just 2 days ago in Brooklyn, New York. But he gave a warning. He said, I don't want anyone that owns a cell phone to touch my coffin. Because he was a traditionalist. He sees the cell phone and the internet as enemies of spirituality. Okay. And also, to get into a yeshiva is the Jewish name for a school, in that sect, they inspect your house before they admit a child. And if you have a telephone, radio, television, cell phone, you're not allowed to put your kid in their school. They won't allow it. You can't have any modern form of communication in your house, because they consider that a corrupting influence on the children. What do you think? Is it right or wrong? It's right. They're right. It sounds fanatical, but like, I remember when Abdul Kalam came to Seattle, about, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago. We were in Kane Hall, and he had a full house there. And he was talking about how his goal is to have a computer in every for every child in every village in India. Right? I mean, it's already in every city, but he wants in every village. And then he explained something about his life. He said he was born in Srirangam, and his father was an imam. And he was brought up, they didn't have telephone, they didn't have television, they didn't have internet, they didn't have anything, right? But he didn't do bad. He became an atomic scientist, the father of the atomic bomb in India, right? So he didn't do bad for a person that didn't have a television, didn't have a telephone, didn't have a cell phone, right? So after he finished his speech, he asked, are there any questions? So I raised my hand. I said, Mr. Kalam, I said, it sounds like you are going diametrically against everything Gandhi proclaimed as a goal for India. You know, everyone looked at me like, what's Harivilas saying? You know? So, and Kalam didn't bat an eye when I said that, you know. And I said that You know, Gandhi wanted to decentralize India. He didn't want to wire up every village with the internet in India. He wanted people to, you know, make their own clothes, grow their own food, and live and maintain their values. I said, you grew up like that, and you didn't do bad in your life. So why do you want to, you know, wire up every village? The villages are the only places where they're still maintaining somewhat the original culture, whether it's Islamic or whether it's Hindu. So why do you want to wire up all the villages and corrupt the minds of all these kids? And he just gave some phony answer, you know. But you see, this is what's going on. I mean, even Modi, who's a good guy in many ways, he wants to technologically advance all of Indian society, including the villages. That's his goal, right? Because he's afraid that the Chinese will blow up India or the Pakistanis will blow up India. So he wants, you know, all the Indians to be educated in IT so they can, you know, he can use the weapons of mass destruction against the Chinese or the Pakistanis. Otherwise, the Pakistanis will go ahead of India and blow up India, right? Okay, so, you know, this is the problem with, you know, once you go down the slippery slope of industrialization, it destroys culture, unfortunately, because, you know, like outsourcing. Outsourcing has seriously disrupted Indian society. You have people staying up all night now in order to be on the phone with the Americans or the Europeans, you know, because it's daytime in the United States, nighttime in India. So their working hours are all night long. And then when morning comes, they go home. So obviously there's no time for Mangal Arati, there's no time for chanting their rounds. There's only enough time to go to the bar and drink a couple alcoholic beverages, adult alcoholic beverages, and go home and sleep it off, and then start over the next day. You see? So it's completely disrupted the normal lifestyle that was India's and normal culture. That's the problem with industrialization, and of course with artificial intelligence and digital technology. So it says here, the Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the definition of the ultimate source, Janmadasya Yata. It is a bona fide commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, Srila Vyasadeva, and gradually it develops into 9 cantos up to the highest state of God realization. So if you read the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll be fully God conscious. But that's not the end. That'll lead to liberation from material bondage, but that's only the beginning of spiritual life. It took 9 cantos to get us to the beginning of spiritual life, where we rise above the influence of the modes of material nature. Then you enter into the Vaikuntha consciousness, where everything is eternal, and you're no longer influenced by the modes of material nature. And then one gradually advances to the beginning stages of love of Krishna. And then one continues to advance. And when we get into the advanced stages of love of Krishna, Prabhupada says there are no English equivalents to the terminology in those higher stages. Up until then, there are English equivalents, such as devotion, and surrender to God, and things like that. There are English equivalents. But once you get to advanced stages of love of God, there's no English equivalents to translate the words. You have to use the Sanskrit words and understand what they mean. Why? Because there's no experience in this world of advanced stages of love of God. No one has ever chronicled it, except in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vedic scriptures. So you see, the Bible, the Quran, they're preliminary studies in spiritual life. Very preliminary. Because you have to rise above the influence of trying to improve your material situations through spirituality. Then you have to purify the quest for detailed knowledge, scientific knowledge of what is matter, what is spirit. And then you have to rise above the enticement of developing mystical powers. All three of those things are obstacles on the path of spiritual life. They're actually obstacles. People think they are the goals. They're actually the obstacles. And this is explained in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 22nd to the 25th verse, where it says, Prakasam cha, pavritim cha. Prakasam cha, pavritim cha, moham eva cha pandava. Nadvesti sampravrittani nanivrittani kankshati. So it says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Bhagavan Upacha, said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, nor longs for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in himself and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. So, this is the state one will achieve by reading the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. But that's only the beginning of spiritual life at that point. It's not real spiritual life yet. Real spiritual life only begins at that point. Then one advances into higher stages of love of God. But you don't even start until you reach that point that was described here in 14:22 to 25. Did you know that? Huh? Yeah. Well, neutrality. You're not attached, you're not detached. See, attachment and detachment are two sides of the same coin. You have to rise above, you have to remain neutral. In other words, you're not attracted to the material nature. If you're attracted to material nature, then you'll be either attached or detached. So the Mayavadi is actually detached. He's still affected by the material nature. Detachment is not the goal. The goal is neutrality, when you're not attracted at all, neither positively or negatively. Just like Kamsa hated Krishna, right? But it's actually, a spiritual relationship with the Lord, because it's still connected to Krishna. So if you hate material nature, you're still attracted to it. And you can't get your mind off of it because you hate it. So you have to remain neutral. You're not affected by it. You're not attracted to it, nor detached from it. You see, the Mayavadi is detached from material nature. Therefore, they will not use something that can be used in Krishna's service. Okay. But the devotee is not attached and not detached. Therefore, if there's something material that can be used in Krishna's service, he will use it. That happens when you're neutral. But when you're detached, like the Mayavadi, you'll reject everything, even things that can be used in Krishna's service. So this is the position that we have to achieve in order to begin our spiritual life. It hasn't actually really begun until we get to that transcendental position where we're not attached nor detached. We're not attached to honor, we're not detached from dishonor. We don't love anyone, we don't hate anybody. And we're always steady in devotional service, regardless of the situation. And you see this in India. Sometimes there's a a temple that's deteriorating. Like, I remember the first time I went to Bombay, I saw a building where a whole side of the building wall was missing, and you could see inside all the apartments. But still people were living there. And there are temples in India, they're like, you know, it's leaking from the roof, one wall has already fallen down, but still arti is going on. Have you seen that? Yeah. But they're steady, right? I mean, unless a hurricane comes and blows the whole thing away, and they'll still be doing arti, even though they blew the building, they'll still do the arti. See? They're not attached, they're not detached. They'll continue, regardless of the situation. Okay, so then it says, the only qualification one needs to study this great book of transcendental knowledge is to proceed step by step, cautiously, and not jump forward haphazardly, as with an ordinary book. Sometimes people pick up a book and they say, what's this book about? And they go to the end and trying to read what's at the end. You know, see if they want to read the book or not. Bhagavatam is not like that. You have to read it step by step. You have to be patient. Because how many lifetimes did it take to develop our attachment to the body? Well, many lifetimes. So you think we can break that attachment overnight? No, not possible. It's going to take a long time to break that attachment. But if we step by step read Bhagavatam, chant our rounds, you know, regulate our activities so that we can come at least on the weekends to Mangal Arati and go through the whole program and so forth, then step by step we'll gradually lose our attraction to the material world. That doesn't mean you reject it like the Mayavadis. It means that you'll use whatever can be used in Krishna's service that's material without being attached to it. And it's just like if you want to worship Ganga Mata in Harkipuri Bridge in Haridwar, you go there and then you take some water from Ganga and you go like this, you say a prayer, and then you offer it to Ganga. You're taking her water and offering it to her. Well, that's what we're doing also. The food that we buy in the supermarket, whatever, the seeds of that food are produced by Krishna. The rain and the sun sprouted the seed, and the heat of the sun and the wetness of the rain sprouted the seed and is nourishing it so that it grows and it turns into a tree or a fruit or a vegetable. And even though someone says, I grew it on my farm, it's still, it grew because of Krishna, right? And it's Krishna's seed. Nobody made the seed. And therefore we should take what Krishna is offering us and offer it back to him as an offering. And then he'll offer it back to us as his prasad. If we understand these things, then we actually become Krishna conscious. Even in an atheistic world, we become Krishna conscious. The only qualification one needs to study this great book of transcendental knowledge is to proceed step by step, cautiously, and not jump forward haphazardly as with an ordinary book. It should be gone through chapter by chapter, one after another. The reading matter is so arranged with the original Sanskrit text, its English transliteration, synonyms, translation, and purports, so that one is sure to become a God-realized soul at the end of finishing the first 9 cantos. So if we are patient and we go step by step, reading each one of the books of Bhagavatam, by the time we get to the 9th canto, end of the 9th canto, we'll be fully Krishna conscious. But that's only the beginning. That's only the beginning there. We had to catch up all those past lifetimes of misconceptions and illusion to get to this point of freedom from the influence of material nature. And from there, now we begin our real spiritual journey. The 10th canto is distinct from the first 9 cantos because it deals directly with the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. One will be able to capture the effects of the 10th canto. One will be unable to capture the effects of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. In other words, if we don't read the first 9 cantos systematically, we will not understand the 10th canto. The book is complete in 12 cantos, each independent, but it is good for all to read them in small installments, one after another. So, that's what we just did. We read the preface in small installments, one after another, and your homework is to explain the difference between spiritual communism and material communism. And a lot of that is explained in the preface itself. But if you want to have more information, if you want to go deeper, then, one second, I'll tell you where to look. This is a major theme, spiritual communism. Prabhupada talks about it. Here it says, spiritual communism, page 1. Okay, let's look, page 1. Wait a minute. Yeah, page 1. That's where we were. Let's see where it says page 1. Okay, it's not the preface. Okay, it's in the introduction. Yeah. So you look on page 1, which is what we're going to read next week. So page 1 gives you a very good idea of spiritual communism. So I'm trying to see where it says it. Oh, let's read that. Yeah, it's talking about Janmadasya Yata. Janmadasya Yata is the basis of spiritual communism. The conception of God and the conception of the Absolute Truth are not on the same level. The Srimad Bhagavatam hits on the target of the Absolute Truth. The conception of God indicates the controller, whereas the conception of the Absolute Truth indicates the summum bonum, or the ultimate source of all energies. There is no difference of opinion about the personal feature of God as the controller, because a controller cannot be impersonal. Of course, modern government, especially democratic government, is impersonal to some extent, but ultimately the chief executive head is a person, and the impersonal feature of government is subordinate to the personal feature. So without a doubt, whenever we refer to control over others, we must admit the existence of a personal feature. Because there are different controllers for different managerial positions, there may be many small gods. According to Bhagavad Gita, any controller who has some specific extraordinary power is called a Vibhutimat Sattva, or controller empowered by the Lord. There are many Vibhutimat Sattvas, or controllers of God, with various specific powers, but the Absolute Truth is one without a second. This Srimad Bhagavatam designates the Absolute Truth, or the summum bonum, as the Param Satyam. So, this is an important point where it explains the difference between God and the Supreme Absolute Truth. There's a major difference, because there are many gods. Anyone who's a controller is a god in a certain reference frame. But there's only one Supreme Absolute Truth. Right? The author of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasadeva, first offers his respectful obeisance unto Param Satyam, the Absolute Truth. Yeah, one time this Mayavadi was trying to teach Sanskrit here, and he got really upset because after a couple classes, none of the devotees wanted to come to his class, because his goal was not to teach Sanskrit, it was to teach Mayavad philosophy to the devotees in the temple. Right? So he came up to me, he was really upset, and he said, I'm never coming back here again, you know, nobody has respect here for the teacher. I said, what's the matter? He said, no one's coming to my class anymore, you know. And the problem is this Hare Krishna mantra, you know. You put all the emphasis on chanting Hare Krishna. You don't put any emphasis on education, on Sanskrit. I said, well, that's not true, but why are they not coming to your class? He said, I don't know. They don't respect gurus here. I said, no, that's not true. I said, it must be something wrong with what you were teaching. How can there be something wrong? I'm an expert in Sanskrit. I said, that may be true, but it doesn't mean you're an expert in Krishna consciousness. He said, but that has nothing to do with Sanskrit. I said, yes, it does. Sanskrit is all about explaining who is the supreme absolute truth. He said, yes, that's right. That's what I was doing. I said, you must not have been explaining it correctly. How do you know? You didn't even come to the class. I said, but I can tell there must be a problem if the devotees don't want to come to the class. It's not because you were teaching Sanskrit, it's because you probably were teaching something incorrect through the medium of the Sanskrit. He said, this is the point. He said, this is the point. You people, you just put all the emphasis on chanting Hare Krishna. I said, yes, but we're simply following our acharyas, especially Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's such a thing as parampara in Krishna consciousness, the disciplic succession. If you say something different than our acharyas, then people will lose interest in what you're saying. He said, I don't accept that. I said, there's the problem. I said, look, if you come to my classes, I'll teach you Krishna consciousness. Then, when you teach Sanskrit, you'll teach it correctly, and people will come to your class. I'm not coming to your class. I said, okay, then you're not going to get any students in your class then. I said, you know, if you're going to come here and teach Mayavad philosophy through the pretext of teaching Sanskrit, you're not going to get one devotee to listen to what you're saying. Because your goal is not really to teach Sanskrit, it's to teach Mayavad philosophy and personalist philosophy. I said, you have to follow the parampara. This temple is based on imam parampara praptam, evam manasa, whatever. He said it's only based on understanding through the prism of our acharyas, who are simply explaining what Krishna said originally. There's no change. Right. So he had a difficult time accepting that. And he left with a huff and a puff. Right. And that was it. But that's right, because everyone's trained here to follow parampara. Right. In fact, Krishna says also the same thing. Imam parampara praptam imam raja saya vidu sakalinha mahata yoganasta parantava. Yes. So let's read that in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, text number 2, where he says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasayo viduka sakalinam hatan yoganasta parantava. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession. And the saintly kings understood it in that way. So that's the whole point. It's received through the chain of disciplic succession. Imam vivasvate yogam proktavam aham avyayam manur vevaswan manave prahar manur iksvakave bravit. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. So this is the history of how the Bhagavad Gita first came to the earth. And then the supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession. So I tried to explain this to him, that we're following parampara, this chain of disciplic succession. If you say something different than what our acharyas have said, then we will reject it. Therefore, if you get trained in the parampara understanding of Krishna's original words, then you can be guru, and you can. Doesn't matter you teach Bhagavad Gita or you teach Sanskrit or whatever you teach, people will listen to you. But if you deviate, then no one will listen to you. You'll be rejected. Okay. So then it says that The author of Srimad, page 1 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, not verse 1, but page 1. The author of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasadeva, first offers his respectful obeisance unto the Param Satyam, the absolute truth. And because the Param Satyam is the ultimate source of all energies, the Param Satyam is the Supreme Person. The gods or the controllers are undoubtedly persons, but the Param Satyam, from whom the gods derive powers of control, is the Supreme Person. The Sanskrit word Ishvara is controller, conveys the import of God, but the Supreme Person is called the Parameshvara, or the Supreme Ishvara. The Supreme Person, or Parameshvara, is the Supreme Conscious Personality, and because he does not derive any power from any other source, he is supremely independent. In the Vedic literatures, Brahma is described as the supreme god or the head of all other gods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna. But the Srimad Bhagavatam confirms that even Brahma is not independent as far as his power and knowledge are concerned. He received knowledge in the form of the Vedas from the Supreme Person who resides within the heart of every living being. That Supreme Personality knows everything directly and indirectly. Individual infinitesimal persons are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality. They may know directly and indirectly everything about their bodies or external features, but the Supreme Personality knows everything about both his external and internal features. So here, this is another thing I explained to this gentleman. I said, look, you cannot explain that God is not a person, because in the 15th chapter Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, oh, by the way, he said, where's this Supreme Personality of Godhead in Sanskrit? I don't see it. I said, yeah, it's there. It said, Yasmat Sharam Atitoham Aksharad Apichotama Atosmi Loke Vedecha Pratitai Purushottamam. Purushottama means the Supreme Person. Purusha Uttama. Purusha means person, Uttama, who is above all ignorance. Yomam evam asamoda janati purushottamam. Sasarvavit bhajanate mam sarva bhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, again, purushottamam, without doubting, is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So I said, there it is. Purushottama means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Person. Or Param Satyam, the absolute truth. Or Parameshvara, the Supreme God, or Supreme Ishvara. These are all referring to Krishna. So, but the real definitive explanation is that Krishna is the Supreme Absolute Truth, as opposed to simply being God. There are many gods, it's true. In the spirit and material world, Lord Shiva is a god. Brahma is a god. Indra is a god. They're all controllers. Ishvara means controller. But Parameshvara means the supreme controller of all controllers. And even higher than that is Param Satyam, the supreme absolute truth, which surpasses all other gods. Okay, so this is our. So your homework again is explain the difference between material communism and spiritual communism, and explain the difference between God and the supreme absolute truth. Those are the two homeworks for next week. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nilamadava Ki Jai. And next part of the homework, read the entire introduction to the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's only, what is it? It's only about 30, it's only 40 pages. You can read it in an hour or hour and a half. So, if you want to follow this course, that is, we're going to go through the whole Bhagavatam, you have to do the homework. If you're not going to do the homework, I mean, just listening, you'll get something out of it. Doing the homework, you'll get a lot out of it. And it should all be in one book, one notebook, Or you have a loose leaf and you do it on a computer and you put the pages in the loose leaf. Either way. You can do it all by hand, or you can do it with a computer and have it in a loose leaf. But you have to bring your homework. You have to bring, I have to see that you're actually doing the homework. Yeah.
So
They're the same thing. Two sides of the same coin.
And the neutral, so Prabhuji, what is the word? Like, is neutral word same as yukta, vairagya and renunciation? Because I used to think detachment is...
No, neutrality, neutral word.
Yukta, vairagya is engaging like everything for Krishna. But what is the Hindi term, or what is the... like
Sanskrit term. Sanskrit
Yes,
term for neutrality is
probably Santa.
tulya. Tulya means equal. Let's see, one second.
Santa?
No, wait a minute.
Santa.
Udasinavat. Udasinavat means neutral.
What is it?
Udasinavat. It's in 14th chapter, verse 23. Udasinavat asino. Asino. Uda asina asino. So, asina means situated, and udasina as if neutral. Yeah.
So Prabhuji, I have a follow-up question. So when you talked about the cell phone, Prabhuji, you were talking about, so at this time when we are in, so I mean, I understand that.
Okay, I'll just explain what the rabbi in New York for his sect of Judaism, that was their rules. Now, I didn't say we have to follow that rule, but that was their rule. But you can understand why he had that rule. And he said, no one can touch my casket if they have a cell phone on them. So his followers, anyone who got close to touching his casket, they searched him to make sure he didn't have a cell phone on himself. But before you can get into their school, they do a walkthrough in your house, and if you have a television, a cell phone, a computer game, a normal phone, or anything, they won't let you in the school. They won't let your kid in the school.
And Prabhuji, I was a little late for joining, so I just wanted a hint for the first portion of the homework, spiritual communism and material communism.
Yeah, well, if you look on the introduction, which is what we read, it's explained there.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? If not, early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, happy, and wise. No, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You have to put your homework